Each year, New York State invests hundreds of millions of dollars in university research. The challenge is to transform that research investment into commercially viable products and processes. A lack of business and legal information and analysis can be a roadblock in the development of these early-stage technologies. The New York State Science and Technology Law Center addresses this problem by building on the expertise in technology commercialization at the Syracuse University College of Law. Experienced faculty and law students provide business and legal research services to New York State universities, research centers, established corporations, and startup companies to help transform research into economic growth.
I'm Ken McLeod. I'm professor of bioengineering at Binghamton University, and I'm the director of the Clinical Science and Engineering Research Center here at the university. Very original proposal on BMI, which was done by a Belgian statistician in the early 1800s, he said, we're warm because we generate heat internally, and we have to lose that same amount of heat to the environment. Otherwise, you would warm up or you would cool down. You'd either freeze to death or you'd burn up. And we don't do either. We stay more or less at a constant temperature. And so if you chill us down, then we have to do something. How do we stay in heat balance? And the way adults stay in heat balance is we lay down white body fat. So the longer you work in an environment like this, or you're a young, thin person, you stay in this environment for the next 30 years, you're going to get heavier and heavier and heavier. Not at a rapid rate, maybe a pound a year, but over 40 years, that's 40 pounds. Your body's going to do that to keep you alive. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It is just that you are going to adapt to try to stay warm. So the question then is, well, what if you warm people up and we get a core body temperature up to normal? Then can we reverse this cycle? Can we turn this vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle? As you warm up the body, it's metabolically more active, so it creates more heat internally, which warms you up more. If you're generating this heat internally, are you going to start losing that body fat? And the answer is yes, you do. We can get people to shed about a pound a week if we can keep their core body temperature in the normal range. We started developing this technology with healthcare in mind, but specifically obesity. And can we reduce obesity in America? So that was really the initial goal, and I'm hoping that we can get enough data on that that we can go to the FDA and say this really does reduce, create weight loss. I'm always looking for situations where I can work on something that could be commercialized in the short term. There can be this disconnect between basic science and improving the health of people. And so it's a question of, does a university play a role there? Should it be playing a role there? My view is yes, of course it does. First of all, we're a public university. We're here in the region, I think, to play a role in the economic development of the region. A new company, it's a special type of new company. It's just not a new mom and pop shop, or it's not a new consulting firm. You have to recognize that, and you have to keep that pipeline going. And that's what we lost in this region. We lost this in much of upstate New York. And so we have to restart that pipeline. So that's really where my efforts are focused. How do we start that pipeline of young, fast-growing companies that will, start hiring people and bringing funds into the region? This work that we've been talking about on directed beam heating was funded by a fairly new program within the SUNY, the State University of New York system, called the Technology Accelerator Fund. When they funded it, there was a public announcement that we funded 3 grants this year. And there's someone up there in Syracuse who's paying attention to these announcements. And they're looking for new technologies that are being developed in the state, which the law students can kind of glom on to investigate what are the intellectual property issues, what are the regulatory issues, what are the liability issues, and so that the students can get a real-world experience in evaluating what they might be evaluating if they were on the job working for corporate America, or if perhaps in a private law practice where they have corporate clients. So I was contacted by the Law Center and say, can we use your technology as a case study? So this was an opportunity for me to get that legal work done, or at least a little bit of it done, without any funding for the most part. So it worked out real well. We were able to get feedback, and at the same time we were preparing a patent to be filed, and so much of the research work came in handy in the preparation of the of the final patent, and we issued that, and we filed that patent. Because we had so much success in upstate New York, in the growth of companies that started 100 years ago, the infrastructure that is needed to support startups is quite different than the infrastructure needed to support an established company. And so we have that infrastructure to support established companies. What we don't have is the infrastructure to help young teams of 2 or 3 people to launch a company from scratch. One of the things we're looking to do here at the university over the next year is build that infrastructure. If you have a concept of how you want to move, how do you want to change the world? Because in the world of entrepreneurship, that's really what we're talking about. If you're focused on, keeping your checkbook, if you're focused on intellectual property law, if you're focused on personnel issues, and did I pay my payroll tax, and is my workman's comp paid up? If you're focused on all those things, you're not focused on making meaning. That's what we mean by infrastructure. You want that right in the startup company's backyard. And without that, the probability of these young companies thriving is really quite small. Part of my world is taking new technology out, but it's very specialized technology. It's technology that's come through a translational research lab. So you go down and you look at that directed beam heater, and I go out there and I see a CO2 laser, radiates at 10 microns, people's skin absorbs 10 microns, I have the lenses, I have the electronics. You notice I used a Wii controller to control that thing, right? Bluetooth is there, so the controls. So I'm just taking these extant technologies, all very cool technologies. Wireless is cool as anything. CO2 lasers are very cool. The lenses are very cool. It's all cool, but other people did it years and years ago, 10, 20, 25, 30 years ago. And I just combine them, okay? And that's what we talk about innovations being combinations. In this particular case, we've combined 4 distinct technologies into one new device. But they were all well-established devices. I didn't have to sit there and think, oh God, I have to build a CO2 laser, or I have to invent wireless control, or I have to invent lenses that pass 10 micron radiation. I didn't have to do any of that. I just did the recombination.